friends! So it is March and I will take any opportunity to have a thematic dinner. Oftentimes in the United States, corned beef and cabbage is used as a traditional dinner for those celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And so I'm going to share with you my 2-year journey on learning how to make allergy-friendly corned beef that is safe for most people's allergies. I say that because I've been thinking over all of these recipes for weeks now, and I can tell you the two that I cannot figure a way around would be a combination of a beef allergy with a nitrate allergy. So most other allergies we can figure out some swap, leave spices out, things like that, but obviously this is a corned beef recipe, so if you have alpha-gal or a beef allergy, then this isn't the recipe for you. Find another one. And then if you are nitrate free in particular, the recipes I'm going to share today are ones that are made with a home brined solution that includes nitrates. However, Trader Joe's does sell a nitrate free corned beef that you can find at their stores. It does include a pre-spiced corned beef brisket though. So if you have a spice allergy plus nitrates, then that would be a combination that would be really hard. So if you're going to celebrate something Irish this year, you might want to make a soda bread or a variation of an Irish stew instead. Let me share with you what all I did over the last couple weeks, and I'm hoping that this can inspire you to find ways to make corned beef that are safe for your allergies, whether it is just making corned beef and cabbage with vegetables, if your family is gluten-free, or finding fun ways to use up leftovers. There are lots of ways that we can make corned beef safe for most people. So join me on this adventure. If you didn't know, one of the allergies we manage is a mustard allergy, and as it is not a labeled top allergen here in the United States, things especially like cured meats are super hard. I spent weeks last year trying to find out if any of the brands of corned beef I could find in the store would be safe for my son. Honestly, most of the companies I contacted didn't even get back to me, and the ones that did couldn't guarantee that there wasn't some issue because those little spice packets that they include with the brined meat normally has mustard in them, and so the combination made it so that I was not comfortable feeding my kiddo corned beef that had been pre-brined at a grocery store. Now the first part of my video is going to be sharing the saga of buying the massive whole brisket at Costco. And if you are someone who, one, just doesn't want to brine your own meat and sees no need because you don't have a spice allergy, then why don't you just skip ahead to the part where I talk about cooking methods and other fun things to do with your corned beef leftovers. But if you're someone that just loves a challenge, you want to try something new, or you want to just feel the joy of buying a massive hunk of meat from Costco, then stick with me as I show you all the steps and what I went through. First of all, I will say that I originally bought the corned beef, or not the corned beef, the giant brisket from Costco because it was $4 a pound. And my thrifty mama heart was like, oh, $4 a pound versus the $5, $6, $7, $8 a pound for those other already pre-trimmed briskets. It seemed like a good deal. Now, if you are not a brisket aficionado, I've been doing some research, so let me explain a little bit about corned beef and the types of meat. So all corned beef is made from brisket. But there's two different cuts of brisket if you haven't seen them before. So there's the flat, which is a large, like almost rectangular piece. And then there's the point that's often triangular or just cut up pieces that are leftovers basically. So if you are wanting to buy and make corned beef and cabbage with that beautifully sliced meat that you display on a platter, then you're going to need the flat cut of corned beef. And so you're going to be looking for the more expensive brisket option that they have at the stores. That is the piece that can be sliced well, holds up together, and is delicious. If you are someone like our family that just really loves corned beef chopped up and in sandwiches or hash or other things, then you can get by with just using the point because you're going to cut it up anyways. And so having that fattier cut of meat that doesn't make the beautiful slices doesn't matter. So when I went to Costco, I saw this giant piece of meat and it was only $4 a pound. And I thought, okay, first of all, it pains me to say that. $4 a pound is a lot for meat. So we don't eat a lot of roasts and things, so it's definitely a special occasion thing to make something with a roast. However, when I was comparing it to the other pre-trimmed, it seemed like a great idea. So I had been thinking about this for a year. Guys, I really have. I walked by the piece of meat last year and I was like, oh no, I'm not gonna do that. How am I gonna cut it? What am I gonna brine it in? I've been dwelling on it for a while, and I finally took the plunge, and it was an adventure. So let me talk you through it. I first bought this giant piece of meat and realized, one, I don't have a cutting board big enough for it. I sanitized my whole countertop, and I figured that I would just keep moving the meat around to make sure I'm cutting on top of my cutting board. So if you're like me and don't have one of those massive cutting boards, you know, you're gonna have to be okay with meat on your counter and just sanitizing things. So I'm holding that out there to begin with. Also, you need to understand the giant brisket. So this is the whole brisket that includes the flat as well as the point. The point lays over top. And so the reason I decided to cut the pieces apart was I was originally just going to brine the whole sucker. I was like, I'm just going to get like a giant brining bag. I'm going to brine the whole thing and it's going to be easy, no big deal. Well, the more I researched it, the more I was looking into like the brining methods and how long it takes to brine meat and what like that and things like that. I realized that I might run into trouble with the meat not brining consistently with how misshapen it was. The flat is kind of, I think, on the bottom with the point sitting kind of on top. And so parts of the brisket are much thicker than others, and that worried me. So I decided to cut them apart. By the time I was done trimming, I'll include some footage for you to see here. By the time I was done trimming off all the extra fat and things, I ended up with 8 pounds of meat. I started out with 13. So yeah, I lost a lot of meat there. It wasn't meat, it was fat. It was a lot of fat that was included in that huge brisket. Here is a look at my finished trimmed flat and point cuts of brisket. I cannot believe it, but I threw away all those fat scraps. So I now know for next year that I will save them all and cook them down to make beef tallow. So that was an opportunity lost on my part. Last year I did a few different things. I made my first Instant Pot corned beef using a store-bought brisket just to experiment, and it was for my husband and other kids to eat. And then I also made the America's Test Kitchen version that was homemade, home brined, and cooked in a Dutch oven in the oven. And both recipes were amazing. As someone who doesn't have food allergies, I could eat both of them, and I would tell you that they tasted very similar. And so when it comes to making inexpensive choices, I would go ahead and, if you don't have a spice allergy, I would go ahead and buy one of the briskets that's at the store already. Because they're pre-brined, the hardest part is already done for you. And you can just pop it in the Instant Pot. And I used the Amy and Jacky Instant Pot recipe for corned beef and cabbage. And I will link that down below, as well as the America's Test Kitchen video that I used. I used it exactly as written for my home brine version. And what's awesome about that one is it doesn't even include mustard, so you don't even have to leave anything out or feel like you're adapting, because you don't have to. If you have other allergies to other spices or things like garlic or onions or things like that, then you can go ahead, just leave those out and just move on. We just adapt and make other flavors stand out in our food, and it'll work out just fine. Here's a look at the spices we're going to be using. I am following the America's Test Kitchen recipe for this that I will link the video online. There are garlic cloves, let's see, we have coriander, black pepper, bay leaves, and some allspice berries. I am using kosher salt here. They had conversions if you're using kosher salt versus table salt, brown sugar, and pink salt. So if you are making this, I highly recommend you go ahead and you order your pink curing salt online. I labeled it for corned beef so no one would get confused in my house. So apparently the labels are often called pink salt #1 or Prague powder. And I went to every single specialty store near me thinking that before St. Patrick's Day they would have brining pickling salt, and they did not. And so last year I used this to brine my flat cut of brisket, and I had to like fold it up to fit it in here, and it didn't brine as consistently because part of the meat was like wedged in the corners and stuff. It was like really folded over. So this I did use this year, and I used it for brining the point cut on the end of my brisket. I just shoved the pieces in here with a half recipe of the brine, and it worked perfectly. For the large flat piece, I did buy this Cuisinart. I will link it down below in the description box. I bought this Cuisinart, I think it is called a brining container. The reviews are kind of mixed on the sucker. First of all, it is huge. This is great for like barbecue prep. If you like kebabs, they show people with kebabs in it and stuff. So it's shallow, but it can also expand. Let me show. So I had to expand it out, and I was a little worried. Like, have you ever bought these things and been like, is it going to collapse? Is it going to like ruin my refrigerator? All the things. I'm happy to say it did not collapse. It held my meat. Now, just beware, like the edges are kind of thin. There's not really a really good handle. I had to carry my brined brisket downstairs to my downstairs refrigerator, and it did feel a little tenuous, you know, like grabbing the edge and holding it. You know, I was worried about holding it just on the bottom, and so I like held the lid on, and it worked. And the lid is a little finicky because of how the lid latches. There's always like separate little latch points on it, so it does not click like seamlessly. It took me a minute or two to get it latched on, but it was successful. I'll say this was expensive. I think it was about $45, and I saw it as like an investment in in the brining process. If you happen to have a restaurant supply store near you, then that may be someplace where you could go and find a food grade container that's long and thin, like that you see in the America's Test Kitchen video, that isn't collapsible. So that may be a better and possibly cheaper choice for you too. If you needed something off of Amazon like I did, then this one is on Amazon and will come to you next day if you need it. So the brining itself is not that hard. You're just adding your spices, you're putting your meat in it, you're setting it in your fridge, and you're just leaving it there. Make sure you do weigh down your meat. I used a plate and a bowl, and I did have one where like the bowl kind of slid off the meat, so I had like a little piece that wasn't brined as well or cured as well as the rest of the meat. So make sure you do have that in place. Once it's in your fridge, you may want to like double check that the plate or whatever you use is holding your meat down appropriately. So once my meat was fully cured, I brought it back upstairs at the end of the 8 days. We had a lot going on, so I ended up waiting the full 8 days instead of pulling it out at 6, and it was super delicious. You can do any of the number of days according to Test Kitchen. And so I rinsed it off thoroughly, patted it dry, and excuse me, and then I used my Instant Pot to cook it. So I used the Amy and Jacky recipe that I'll link below. And so I used that method. I learned from last year that my family does not like having free-floating spices in their Instant Pot with their corned beef. So I used the America's Test Kitchen sachet recipe, just taking some cheesecloth and putting spices. It was coriander, black pepper, some garlic cloves, and I believe some bay leaves. Yeah, a couple bay leaves. And then I tied it up with a strip of the cheesecloth because inevitably I don't have kitchen twine. I don't know why. I really should by now. I think my kids use it for a craft or something. So, and then I just put everything in the Instant Pot. The recipe linked does not include such a large brisket, but I put my my point cut of meat on the bottom. I had 2 different chunks, and I figured that would need to cook longer anyways, because it's kind of a tougher piece of meat. And then I just stacked the 2 halves of my flat on top. I made sure my sachet was down in the water, 2 cups of water I added, and I cooked mine for 2 full hours. Now it took a long time to come up to temperature, and then when it came time, I let it sit for 20 minutes for a natural pressure release. Now be aware, it does take a while to come down in pressure, and if you're doing a quick release, I had some like meat foam come out of the top because of how very full my Instant Pot was. So you may want to allow some extra time, or you can back off the cooking time just a bit, but mine was perfectly cooked. So if you're going to do a full 8 pounds of corned beef in your Instant Pot, I would still cook it for that 2 hours with the 20-minute natural press release. Just know that it could take you a little while to finish releasing all the steam. And then I pulled out the meat and I let it rest till it was cooler, and I sliced up my flat cuts in beautiful slices. And then for the point, I just went ahead and I chopped it all up. So last year when I made my 2 different variations, I made the whole corned beef and cabbage dinner. It was beautiful. We were searching for pictures of it. I know I took pictures of it, but we had a phone casualty incident recently where I lost most of 2023's photos, and so it must be gone. But anyways, it was a beautiful platter of corned beef and cabbage, and I'm the only person that ate the cabbage, potatoes, and carrots. So we've decided that our family loves corned beef, but we are Reuben people. We are not corned beef and cabbage people. So this year I decided to take the slices, and I left a few slices whole, and then I just chopped up all the meat and I froze it. So I made this 3 weeks before St. Patrick's Day, trying to get this video out for everybody. And then I froze all the meat, and then 2 days before St. Patrick's Day, I'll just thaw out the meat and it'll be all ready to make our sandwiches. So if you are going to go ahead and make a corned beef and cabbage dinner, you can finish your vegetables in your Instant Pot also using the Amy and Jacky recipe. If you are using a whole lot of meat like I did, you would just want to drain off some of the liquid first, because there were a lot of juices in the Instant Pot and you would want to make sure that there was enough room for all your vegetables. So I would pour off probably at least half into a fat separator so that you have it set aside, and then you can go ahead and finish your vegetables and cook them for a few minutes, and then you'll have your whole meal ready. It'll be super easy and delicious. And corned beef and cabbage by itself, following the Instant Pot, the recipe from America's Test Kitchen, has no top allergens in it. It's meat and veggies, and it's delicious and safe for most people. Next up, for my family, I made Reuben sandwiches. Now here I'm going to show you my husband's favorite method that I made for him as a test for this video. Note, I'll make the modifications that I talk about in this video for my family on St. Patrick's Day. As he is the only allergic to shellfish, I used Ken's Thousand Island, Swiss cheese, chopped corned beef, and this amazing sauerkraut from Trader Joe's. Here I used Jewish rye bread, but my husband informed me that marbled rye really is iconic, and I'll try and get that for St. Patrick's Day. For my son and some of my kids, we substitute sourdough bread and leave off the cheese for my kiddo with a milk allergy, or you can substitute your own dairy-free version. To make the Thousand Island, I started off by making the Big Mac sauce recipe from my Big Mac taco recipe a while back, and I'll link that inspiration recipe down below. So I used our homemade bread and butter pickles and mayo as the base. If you need an egg-free mayo, I highly recommend Hellmann's vegan. It's a great choice, and they don't add mustard, is what I was told recently when I contacted Hellmann's. They don't test for it, but they don't add it. So do with that as you will. I just added everything together, but I noticed that I didn't get my pickles chopped up super small, and so I went ahead and I used my immersion blender to kind of blend it all up to get a better texture, and I thought it was really tasty. It is not the exact same as the Ken's Thousand Island. It does have an extra bite to it from, I'm sure, that added mustard, but this homemade version is super delicious and nobody's gonna know any different. So to make a Reuben, I love to warm up the beef in a pan before making your sandwich. You can microwave it, and then we use either country crock plant sticks to butter our bread, or use whatever butter or mayo that you like to use for making essentially a grilled cheese sandwich. This is a Reuben, not grilled cheese, but same premise applies. And then if you can have cheese, we always start with a layer of Swiss cheese, then the meat, then sauce, sauerkraut, and another layer of cheese with the top piece of bread. Now you toast it all, make sure you smash it down to get it nice and golden brown. Flip it super carefully because otherwise, like me, you will have meat fly all over the place. And just serve it. It is delicious, and we always serve it with a side of extra Thousand Island because you really can just never have enough. If you are someone that wants something different to use your leftover corned beef with, I highly recommend you give a Reuben roll a try. It is a great way to use up leftover corned beef, and it's fun to just try something different. I get these spring roll wrappers in the Asian aisle of a huge grocery store near me called Woodman's. They are kept frozen, and they only have wheat as a top allergen in them, but always do your research again for all of your foods. If you need to contact companies about shared lines, etc., make sure you do that. In this case, I used corned beef, sauerkraut, Thousand Island, and I mixed it in a bowl. I did actually add some tofutti into it, and I show you here, and my goal was I was hoping that the tofutti would like hold the filling together, but I microwaved it and it got too loose, and I think it's entirely unnecessary. So the one thing I would do differently from what I'm showing you in these clips is that I would make sure to drain out the liquid from the sauerkraut a little bit more. I just kind of slopped it in, and it made my filling extra wet, which you don't want. And so I would drain the sauerkraut first and add in Thousand Island to taste. And if you can have cheese, throw in a ton of shredded Swiss cheese, and I'm sure that will help hold your filling together well too. And what I've learned from using these spring roll wrappers, I am definitely not a pro when it comes to this, but I've enjoyed working with these spring roll wrappers, some with my kiddos in the past, and I've learned that less is more when it comes to filling, and you need to roll as tightly as possible without breaking your wrapper. That's pretty much key. So I went back and I had to do a little less filling on these. I did a trial run with some and they didn't work out. And make your filling perpendicular to the point of one of the ends, and then you do kind of an envelope fold. You fold the point over and tuck in the edges, and then wrap it up as tightly as possible. So then what I do is I love to air fry them. It is just easy and just so much simpler and a little healthier for you than deep frying them. And so I brushed a little bit of oil on these and then I air fried them in my air fryer for between 7 and 9 minutes. And I did rotate them partway through to make sure all the sides were getting crispy. If you are gluten-free and are wanting something different that you can use your leftover corned beef with, then I recommend that you look to the humble potato as your carrier for your corned beef. Corned beef hash is a great thing to make, especially if you can have eggs. You can make it in the morning with diced potatoes and cooked onions, and then you could top it with an egg. That would be delicious. And also, I love baked potatoes for all things. And so you can make an awesome baked potato and then add in your corned beef, your sauerkraut, and your Thousand Island on top to make a delicious corned beef baked potato inspired extravaganza. So anyways, I hope this video has been helpful to you in finding a new way to make corned beef, either a new recipe inspiration or a new way of cooking your corned beef. It really can be an allergy-friendly food for many people. If you want more allergy-friendly content, please subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell, like this video, and share my videos with other people who might find it helpful too. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!